Picture this. The summer of 2009 is rapidly approaching. You are a summer camp counselor tasked by the director of the camp to build an 800-foot-long zipline for the kids to use this upcoming season. You get to work, spending tens of thousands of dollars of the camp's hard-earned money, and after weeks of back-breaking labor, you, the other camp workers, and any others you can help rope into this endeavor, erect two 40-foot-tall launch and receiving towers. You connect and tighten the steel wires. You rig up the tires at the bottom to act as the final brake on the descent. You tie a sack of potatoes to the line, the first test run. You gently set it free and you wait. Less than 20 seconds pass, and the sack explodes on impact. Congratulations, you've made the child-annihilating zipline, aka the RIPline. Dexter Stratton, a camp counselor at an unnamed summer camp in the Pacific Northwest, has a problem. He and his co-workers have accidentally created a child-flinging death machine, and he knows it. Like Icarus, this camp has strayed too close to the sun. They did not take into account any engineering best practices, any of the laws of physics, and to be frank, plain common sense. Naturally, the first thing you do when you realize you've created an engineering monster beyond all comprehension is post on the somethingawful.com ask/tell subforum, and we get a thread entitled, "Tell me how to fix this zipline." Most of this thread is gone, replaced with just the words, "This is a thread about ziplines, but someone did something really ugly. Sorry, we're closed." At some point in the thread's history, Dexter was doxed. One of the pictures he posted in the thread was of a temporary anchor for the compound bungee system they had created, in the form of a 1986 Ford Bronco. The anchor for this was tied to the trailer hitch of said Bronco, and unfortunately you could still see its license plate. Someone, potentially a goon — goons are users of something awful, not that kind — had taken it upon themselves to run the plate, find out that it was registered to the camp, and called the police. Rumor has it that the line they fed to the police was, "They're creating a child-killing death machine." He was hoping that some of the 100,000 members of Something Awful could shed some light on his troubles. And to start off, I have 3 questions. Question 1. Did you really build this without considering the laws of physics? I don't really need an answer to that one, so I'm going to assume that yes, they did just build it. Question 2, how did we get here? And thanks to the magic of the Wayback Machine, we have an answer. When we started planning, we asked for an engineer, but was told that there wasn't any money. It's like this. The director wanted a zipline and asked us to build one on a specific area. We can build anything, but don't always get to have input as to whether or not we should build it. And all along we were saying, I sure wonder how this is supposed to stop. No one was surprised when the first test weight slammed into the pole, and by then all the money for the project had been spent. A later interview with Dexter reveals that on his first day of the job, they showed him the location, and his immediate thought was, how are you going to stop it? The answer he got was, we'll figure it out. Question 3 from me, well, this question is stolen from another Something Awful user, but I want to ask this one as well. Forums user The Gay Bean asked, quite straightforwardly, can you really just decide to do this and do it? Aren't there permits, inspectors, and the like, as with any structure that you build? Turns out you can. There is no governing body over challenge courses, ziplines, or anything of the like. There is the ACCT that issues a list of guidelines for ziplines, but will not certify anything built by anyone. Before we go further, what does the zipline actually look like? Editor me, pull up the slides. It should be very obvious that this thing was well built. Poorly engineered, but well built. The braided steel cable was installed to the telephone poles making up the bulk of the construction by some workers from the local public utilities district. So there were some engineers involved, I guess, just not ones that mattered. Dexter has helpfully given us the final dimensions of the RIPline. There were 761 lateral feet between the 2 poles. That, in and of itself, isn't a problem. The problem is, over those 761 feet was the drop, which came in at 143 feet. To put that into some context that's easier to understand, the Statue of Liberty stands 151 feet tall from toe to torch tip. Ideally, when you're designing a zipline, you're aiming for a grade of around 3 to 6%. This means that for every 100 feet of horizontal distance, the cable should drop 3 to 6 feet in elevation. And in this case, for every 100 feet of horizontal distance, the RIPline dropped nearly 19 feet. Just a little off then. Due to the nature of ziplines, the actual drop occurred in the first 600 feet and is much steeper than that, then rises back up to the platform, allowing some speed to be scrubbed off. But how much speed are we talking once we hit the receiving platform, just roughly? Much like a lot of things in life, we have a formula. G multiplied by 143 equals 0.5 v to the power of 2. This gives us a result of 95.67 feet per second, or 65 miles per hour. That math comes from Dexter himself. I don't really do math, but I'm gonna hope he's correct. He decides 15 miles an hour might be a little more sane. So we plug that into the formula instead and we come up with 7.5 feet. If you can do math in your head, like I can't, he overshot the ideal height by 19 times. So, how do we fix this monstrosity? Bear in mind we've spent $20,000 in cash, lumber, and cable, scraping a rough gouge out of the hillside where the old inner tubing line used to be, and only now realized that our efforts were basically good for nothing, aside from making something directly out of Action Park. The short answer is, you don't. You do not re-engineer this or retool this. You built a death ride. Congratulations. Speeds of 44 to 60 miles an hour, are you fucking kidding me? You do not tone that down, you tear it down. Any other option is inviting yourself to lawsuit hell. Other goons are less cautious. Let's run through the highlights. We could put a ton of slack into the line, however that would still be 20 feet off the ground. You could dial this in really nicely if every kid at summer camp was the same size. Unfortunately, real life is not going to be so kind. If you dial in just the right level of slack that an 8-year-old is gently deposited on the receiving tower, your bulkier teenagers who will still be going 20 to 30 miles per hour won't have a good time. What if we go the other way? Enough slack that teenagers are safe? Well, now you have a parabolic arc that will leave 8-year-old Timmy suspended 20 feet off the ground in the middle of a gulch, with what some forum users are beginning to describe as having a mass grave aesthetic. I need you to remember we're trying to accomplish the equivalent of slamming on the brakes while going at highway speed while not actually having any brakes. Other suggestions are like giant ball pit on the other side you can fling yourself into, adding something squashable on the end of the line, ideally something variably squashable like old tires at the back for mostly solid stopping power, I don't know, bike tires, dense foam. Get some car springs, pad the fuck out of them. Other suggestions include off-harness braking, on-harness braking, dragging a big rock on the ground, or just try more slack and see what happens. One suggestion that is tried is tennis balls on the cable. That doesn't really go well. Dexter comes up with an idea where the rider's pulley was attached to a smaller non-load-bearing cable that went back up to the top platform and spun a propeller, the blades of which would feather as the speeds increase so as to create more resistance. He says this was the most promising idea until we found out a zipline in Tahoe had tried the exact same thing. No, that's not the bad part. We love taking ideas from others. It was a bad thing because the propeller cable in the Tahoe zipline snapped and decapitated a guy on his honeymoon. Moving on, one final suggestion, my personal favorite, just have the bad kids ride it. Look, I never said ideas from goons are any good, okay? Sadly, they never considered making it cooler. Eventually, another subforum on somethingawful.com notices this unfolding cacophony of disasters, so I need to talk about a subforum called FIAD. Its full name is Fuck You and Die, and to be honest, it's the cool place to hang out on Something Awful. You can find most of the cool people there. In FIAD, you just chill, do whatever, totally relax. You take it easy, is the FIAD motto. It's laid back. You show up if you want to have a good time. Another good reason to show up is if you want to hang out with friends. FIAD will occasionally reach out and find other parts of the forum to make fun of. They notice the thread and obviously start dunking on Dexter. My favorite part is making fake James Bond movies about the campsite. Zip and let die. 40 miles an hour is not enough. Children aren't forever. You only zip once. Groundraker on your progeny's cemetery service. They don't exactly dislike the guy, but they definitely get a lot of humor out of shitting on him. I don't want to blame Fayad for Dexter being doxed. It could quite literally be anyone, but it does happen around this point. I get a call the next day while I'm at work from the facilities guy. He says, dude, some cops just came up here to the camp asking about a post you made on some forum. Dexter is understandably unhappy that the internet has reached out and called the cops on him. And he goes back and removes all his posts. It's one of the reasons why the RIPline is basically just an oral history, and I wanted to sit down, pull together all the disparate archives together into one coherent story. Dexter doesn't really take much advice from the forums. Obviously, mostly it's just zingers directed at him. They're just ripping into the dude for building what is basically a child murdering machine. That being said, what the camp decides it needs to do is spend more money. If you remember at the start, we'd already spent $20,000, roughly, to get things up and running. According to Dexter, the camp spent another $50,000 for a total of $70,000 all up, trying to come up with a solution, and they do eventually give up on remediating the zipline issues. They build a 200-foot-long 4-lane zipline from the bottom platform back towards the hillside. The kids really enjoy it. 200 feet's still not bad for a zipline, and the slope is way more manageable. That $70,000 bill, however, bankrupts the camp. All of their cash reserves were wiped out trying to fix the fatal flaws in the death machine they created, and the ongoing hangover from the 2008 housing crash eventually caught up to them in 2010, sending registrations down its own metaphorical RIPline. Dexter abandoned his forum account, made a new one so he wouldn't be mocked, and by his own words, he's not been active on the forum since 2012, but apparently he's now doing okay and working his dream job. I'm personally disappointed he never took my favorite bit of advice. Let the kids strap whatever they want onto the zip line: huge water balloons, jars of spaghetti sauce, small animals, and let fly. Thank you for listening. My links are in the description along with everything else. Go listen to my podcast. There's some Patreon exclusive stuff dropping soon if it hasn't already. Don't forget, the internet makes you stupid.
Time to shit your